Hello again, everybody. It's my absolute pleasure to be able to introduce Monica Bobbitt this evening as our keynote speaker for today's sessions around personal growth. Monica was a military spouse for almost 21 years until her husband was tragically killed in a lab rollover during exercise Maple Resolve at CFB Wainwright in May of 2014. Monica writes about her experiences as a military wife and widow in her blog, A Goat Rodeo, where she openly and honestly discusses what it's really like to be widowed and shares the wisdom she has learned as she continues to move forward with her life. She also shares her story with military members and their families at speaking events across the country. Monica is also a regular contributor to Canadian Military Family Magazine and is currently enrolled in the University of Calgary's Certificate in Creative Writing program. Monica, her 3 children, and their crazy black lab Ginny have recently relocated from Nova Scotia and now once again call Ottawa home. And you can learn more about grief, resiliency, and life after loss on Monica's website, A Goat Rodeo, and on her Facebook page, facebook.com/A Goat Rodeo. And when we started planning this conference, Monica was one of the first people who popped into my head for possible speakers and was kind of on my list of must-haves, but also a big ask, and we're thrilled to have Monica join us from our first conversation. I just was so at ease listening to her share ideas and thoughts and her story, and I'm just so thrilled to not only be a fan of hers, as I've been following A Goat Rodeo for quite some time, but to hear her speak this evening and share her story with all of us. So welcome, Monica.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. And I just wanted to thank Joanna for all of her help, too. Before I start, I have to apologize. I am full of head colds. I don't normally sound like this, but it's just the way it goes, right? It's never convenient. And the other thing I wanted to say is my absolute favorite posting was Leavenworth, Kansas, which, kind of makes this even more special for me. So, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for asking me to speak. It's an incredible honor for me. Every time I speak, I'm still always kind of shocked that people want to hear me. The journey that brought me here today was obviously an unexpected one. In fact, if you had told me 5.5 years ago that I would be speaking at an event such as this, I would have never believed you. And if I'm being completely honest, I probably would have asked you if you were smoking something. Because that was before it was legal. But the thing is, we truly never know where life is going to take us. I never planned any of this life I now live. I never planned to be a writer or a speaker. I came upon it accidentally after my husband Dan was killed on May 21st, 2014, when his lab rolled over during exercise Maple Resolve. I woke up that day a wife, just like many of you did this morning, and I went to bed that night a widow, lost, frightened, and full of uncertainty. I was, as Veterans Affairs Canada now deems me, a survivor. A survivor, a person who survives, especially a person remaining alive after an event in which others have died. I was the person remaining, but I hardly felt like alive. In fact, for weeks, I felt nothing but numbness. I was shattered, trapped in a black void, and I had absolutely no idea how to find my way through it. When we lose our balance and find ourselves completely lost, not knowing what to do with our lives, we have to search for what will make us whole again. This journey through the dark depths of our sorrow and pain is the most crucial journey of them all. Relentless days, weeks, months that unravel themselves before us and challenge our outlooks and our beliefs, and whisper over and over in the darkness, "Who are you? Who do you want to be?" To which we carefully respond, "I don't know." Until suddenly one day we do know. Somewhere along the way on this unwanted, unexpected journey, we find ourselves fully and completely, without filters, without shame. The darkness does not destroy the light inside of us. It defines us and reveals who we really are. Death truly is life's greatest teacher. Death challenged me in every way possible. It took away everything I believed in and forced me to confront my worst fears. And yet, Death made me who I am today. It made me appreciate each and every moment. It has shown me the power of vulnerability and the importance of gratitude. It has made me love more fiercely than I ever thought possible. And death has made me wiser. Death broke me and then made me resilient and stronger than I ever thought I could be. I am not just a survivor. I'm a thriver because I have chosen to be. And who we are is exactly who each one of us, for good or bad, has chosen to be. I didn't always choose to thrive. In fact, I can tell you quite honestly, there were a lot of years I did anything but thrive. Before Dan died, I had a seemingly idyllic life that many would envy. A great, albeit forgetful husband, 3 healthy children, a beautiful new house, a successful craft business, loads of amazing friends. I had this wonderful, happy life. But the truth was, I wasn't very happy with myself, and I really hadn't been for a lot of years. For so many years, I struggled with feeling like I wasn't enough. I put so much pressure on myself to be the perfect military wife and mother. I spent so much time comparing myself to everyone else, and I always sold myself short. They were so perfect. I was so far from perfect. I wasn't thin enough or fit enough. I struggled with my weight for years after I had kids. I was so embarrassed by it that I hid behind big baggy clothes. My kids barely recognized me in pictures from those years. I barely recognized myself, and not just because I was so much heavier and frumpier then, but because I was clearly so unhappy. Because I wasn't enough. I wasn't organized enough. I was always behind on the laundry. I barely managed to plan meals day to day, and my house always seemed to be a disaster. Whenever my mother-in-law was coming to visit, I would spend the week before frantically cleaning and tidying because her house was always so immaculate. I always worried mine wasn't clean enough, never mind that it was a 50-year-old PM2 with paint peeling off the walls. Still not clean enough. I would drive myself and Dan crazy with it, and every time he would tell me, "It's not the Queen Mother coming to visit, you know." No, it was worse. It was his mother. And I wasn't that mom. I wasn't the fun, though I am kind of funny, mom. The one who organized all the awesome play dates and parties. The kids' birthdays would cause me massive amounts of stress every year. I hated birthday parties. I couldn't, and I still can't, to be honest, decorate a cake to save my soul. But I sensibly order them now. I made a Cookie Monster cake one year that looked so demonic, I had nightmares for a week. I'm not kidding you. Here it is. It's horrific. And I didn't make amazing crafts and decorations for the kids' parties. They were lucky to get balloons and streamers from the dollar store. Thank the dear Lord Pinterest and Instagram didn't exist in those days, or I would have driven myself right over the edge. Hashtag I suck at cake decorating. Hashtag I hate birthday parties. Hashtag please shoot me now. And worst of all, I was just a stay-at-home mom. Just. For a lot of years, we couldn't afford to buy a house, and we never had a second car. We didn't go on exotic vacations in Europe or the Caribbean. Our summer holidays were always spent visiting our families. There were many years we lived paycheck to paycheck. Of course, while I was feeling like a failure for not having a career, many of my working mom friends were struggling with feelings of guilt for not being at home with their kids. The grass is always greener, but I couldn't see that at the time. And they were also struggling with their own feelings of inadequacy, but I couldn't see that either. I believed I wasn't enough, and I was unhappy because of it. I was so ambivalent about my life. When I look back on those years, I can see I was about so many things. I couldn't see it so clearly then, though. The irony is, Dan did. Even though we never talked about it, he could see it. That's why he wrote inside my 43rd birthday card, 43 is better than the alternative. 3 months later, he died. He was 43. When he died, I hit rock bottom. It was the lowest point of my life, physically and emotionally. Without warning or time to prepare, I suddenly found myself a 43-year-old, unemployed, widowed mother of 3 teenage children. I had no idea how I was going to support my children, where we were going to live, what I was going to do with my life. I didn't even know who I was anymore. The weight of those uncertainties almost crushed me. But as I lay there in the dark, under the broken pieces of the piles of my life, under the piles of broken pieces of my life, I realized that no one was going to come save me. No one could rescue me or fix my life, except me. I needed to get up and be my own hero. And so I did. I got up and I rebuilt my life piece by painstaking piece. It took a lot of grief, it took a lot of hard work, and it took choice. I didn't get to choose what happened to me, but I did get to choose how I responded to it. I could let it make me bitter, or I could let it make me better. I choose better. So many people have told me that they could never be as strong as me. They couldn't do what I have done. I think we all underestimate what we are capable of. That's human nature. But we don't know what we can do until we're forced to do it. The truth is, I'm not special, I'm not unique, and I'm certainly not amazing, though I must admit I find it lovely that so many people think I am. I don't have a magic formula. I just made a choice, and to me it was the only choice I could make, a choice each one of you can also make. Because to thrive is a choice. Thrive, to progress toward or realize a goal despite or because of circumstances. We are not defined by our circumstances, we are defined by ourselves. But thriving is not a passive process. You can't just choose to thrive and then suddenly you're thriving. Thriving is an active, working, fluid process. And thriving, just like resilience, looks different for each one of us. It's as unique to each one of us as our grieving is. And it's also different for each of us at different stages of our lives. In order to thrive and live my best life, I first had to honor my grief. Grief demands to be heard. Until you lean into it and acknowledge it and process it, you will never heal. We don't all grieve the same way. Our grief is as unique as our fingerprint. No 2 widows will ever experience loss the same way. Being widowed at 43 with 3 teenage children is not the same as being widowed while pregnant at 23. Having your husband die as a result of cancer is not the same as having your husband suddenly die in an accident. Having your husband die of suicide is not the same as having your husband killed in Afghanistan. They are all equally tragic, all equally sad and devastating, all life-changing, and yet all different. My grief was unique to me. Only I truly knew what I was feeling, and I was not obligated to share my grief with anyone. I'm an activity-oriented griever. Activity-oriented grievers tend to immerse themselves in activities such as writing, talking about what happened, advocating, and physical activities like running and walking. All things I did, all things that helped me thrive in the process. In order to thrive, I also had to take care of myself. Grieving takes a massive toll on your body, physically and mentally. Recovering from a traumatic event can take years. In fact, in some ways, my body is still recovering. I still struggle with insomnia, and I'm still severely anemic. The military spends a lot of time preparing soldiers to go to war, but they don't spend any time preparing wives to become widows. Unfortunately, they don't issue us joining instructions when we are widowed. And surprisingly, when we are notified of a death, we actually aren't given any information on grief and the incredible impact it will have on our bodies. There is no what to expect when you are grieving for the military spouse. Somebody should probably write one of those. Even though I had studied the basics of grief in university, I had absolutely no idea what reactions to expect. I didn't know that I would go into shock. I didn't know about the numbing exhaustion or about the memory loss. I didn't know about the confusion or distractibility. I never knew that I'd get in my car one day to go to the grocery store, but find myself in the drive-thru at Tim Hortons instead, crying because I couldn't get the words out to order the coffee that I didn't even want. I didn't know I wouldn't be able to concentrate on anything for longer than a few minutes, or that it would be 18 months before I could actually sit down and read an entire book. I didn't know about the heart palpitations, overwhelming fatigue, insomnia, and relentless headaches, or that it would take over a year for me to get my appetite back. And I didn't know what widow's weight loss was. It really is a thing. I think I lost about 30 pounds in the first month or so. Fortunately, I quickly realized that I needed to take care of myself physically and emotionally. In order to be the best mom I could be for my kids, I needed to take care of myself. I made my mental and physical health a priority. I learned to say no. I set boundaries. I refused to carry anyone else's grief. And I learned to ask for help. That was a hard one for me. But asking for help doesn't mean you're weak. It means we're strong. Being strong means knowing when to ask for help, when to lean on others, and also knowing when to stand on your own. I'm sorry, that's my crazy dog.
I love your dog, don't worry.
I lost more weight and started to exercise regularly. I walked the dog every day for short periods at first and then longer as I got stronger. Walking has become my best therapy. Fresh air always seems to help put things in perspective. In fact, when I first met my new doctor, a few months after Dan died, I'm just going to shut the door.
No problem, Monica. It's fun to hear the dog as you're talking about him.
Not so fun on this end. When I first met my new doctor a few months after Dan died, he told me the best antidepressant he could ever prescribe was for me to get out and walk. He was right. And then I started running and weight training. And here's a shocking piece of info. Exercise helps me cope with stress so much better. Who knew? Somewhere along the way, on all those kilometers on the trail, I started to find myself again. In order to thrive, you have to know yourself. When Dan died, my whole world was turned upside down, and for a while, I felt like I'd lost myself. I had so many unanswered questions. How would I support my children? Where would we live? What was I going to do with the rest of my life? Who was I? I really had no idea what the heck I wanted to do with the rest of my life, but I did know one thing with utter certainty. I did not want to spend the rest of my life as Lieutenant Colonel Dan Bobbitt's widow. Of course, I will always be Dan's widow, but that is not who I am, and it's certainly not what I do, which is a good thing because I'm actually a pretty mediocre widow, and when I do something, I usually don't do it by half measures. I am so much more than what I have lost. I am not just Dan's widow, as I was not just Dan's wife. I am not what happened to me. Widowhood forced me to evaluate not just my life, but who I am fundamentally as a person. I've gotten to know myself really well over the last few years, the good, the bad, the ugly. So much of my life I spent longing for the elusive if only. If only I were better at this or that. If only I was taller and thinner. If only my hair was straight so I could have one of those cute haircuts like everybody else. If only. The last 5.5 years have given me the wisdom to know that none of those things would have made me happier. Well, okay, maybe except for being a few inches taller. I mean, come on, when you're 5'1", 2 inches makes a big difference. In a couple of weeks, I will turn 49. 40 freaking 9. 6 years ago, I was maw about celebrating my birthday. This year, it's going to be an event. Because seriously, how lucky am I to be 49? So many people don't even make it to that age. Their lives tragically cut short far too soon. I have a lot more wrinkles than I did at 43. Widowhood will do that to you. And my hair color is now a well-disguised natural gray. I've been skinnier in my life, but I've never been bitter. In fact, I'm emotionally, mentally, and physically healthier than I ever was when Dan was alive. And I can honestly say I'm the happiest I've been in years. Ironically, the best version of me was born from my husband's death. It took me a long time to reconcile myself with that. But as it turns out, I actually like myself, and I'm so proud of the woman I have become. Inside, I'm still Monica, but I'm a different version of her than I was 5.5 years ago. This is a Monica who knows all too well that life can change in one tragic moment, and so she no longer takes anything for granted. This one is more grateful and more compassionate. The one who isn't afraid to take risks or to try new things, the one who refuses to live life with regrets. This Monica is much more self-assured and confident. My worth and my belonging are not negotiated with other people. I am enough. I was always enough. When I found myself, I found my purpose. To thrive, we all need a sense of purpose. I needed to contribute. I needed to give back to my community in a positive, meaningful way. So many people had stepped up to the plate to help me when I needed them, and it was important for me to give back. I started by volunteering at my local Legion branch. Volunteering at the Legion enabled me to give back and still be an active member of a military community of sorts. Volunteering at the Legion gave me a sense of purpose when I was lost. It was incredibly rewarding, fulfilling, and sometimes frustrating. And it was also highly entertaining by times, especially when they started giving me dating advice. Yes, dating advice from the 85-plus crowd. I seriously cannot make this stuff up. And I'll tell you this is my favorite story. One night I was volunteering at the Legion, and 3 of the old gaffers, the youngest was 85 and the oldest was 92. He's a World War II vet, and they're sitting there, and I could tell they were cooking something up, because you know what old guys are like, right? And I said, "What are you guys talking about?" And the oldest, the 92-year-old vet, looked at me and he said, "Monica, we think it's time you get a man." And I said, I'm looking at my watch, and I'm thinking it's time I go home and have a gin and tonic. And I looked at them for a few minutes, and I said, I appreciate that, but you know that I'm okay. I don't need a man to look after me. I can look after myself. To which Hubert, the 92-year-old, responded, "You'd have a lot better luck if you weren't so saucy." Probably might be true. But anyway, I also started writing my blog, A Goat Rodeo. Initially, it was a form of therapy to help me process my grief. But then I realized by writing my story, I was actually owning it. And when you own your story, you get to write the ending. As the incredibly wise Brene Brown says, owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. I didn't want to spend my life running from my story, or worse, living someone else's version of it. Owning our story and loving ourselves through the process, as Brown says, is the bravest thing we will ever do. It takes courage and vulnerability to share ourselves openly and honestly. When we share our stories, we help ourselves heal and we help others heal. By sharing my story, I was able to reach out to others who were struggling. I was able to support them, and I was able to give them hope and a safe place in turn to share their stories. We all need that safe place. We need a community. Call it a village, call it a tribe, whatever you call it. In order to thrive, we all need a circle of friends to help us make our way through this world. In the hours after Dan's death, my military family rallied around me and our children. They were the glue that held me together in those excruciating early days that followed. I'm not sure how I would have managed it all without them. While I was picking out caskets and urns, they were feeding my children and doing my laundry. When the media hounded my house, they chased them away. They made sure I ate and tried to rest. They cooked and cleaned and answered 1,000 calls. But most importantly, they were just there. They cried with me and laughed with me and held me up when I no longer had the strength to stand on my own. That support didn't end after the first few weeks or months, and it didn't end when I moved back home to Nova Scotia, and it still hasn't ended. They have been with me every step of the way the last 5+ years. In fact, my tribe is why I'm now living in Ottawa today. After Dan died, I had no idea where I wanted to live for the rest of my life. It's not something that we had really started talking about yet. I didn't know where I wanted to live permanently, but I did know I didn't want to stay in Petawawa. And if any of you have been close to Petawawa, you can probably understand that one. I couldn't stay in Petawawa. Military widowhood is like forced early retirement. Most people have years to plan their retirement with their partner. When you are widowed, you are forced to make those decisions completely on your own within 2 years, but I think they might have changed that. No, I don't think they did. I'm not sure. If you want to have your move paid for. Fortunately, my children were older, so the 4 of us sat down and made the decision together. And we decided we would move home to Nova Scotia to be closer to family. I knew that making the transition to a civilian community after spending all of my adult life in a military one would not be easy, but at the time it was the right decision to make. But I learned sometimes you can never really go home, because home is never really the same again, and neither are we. The Monica who moved back to Nova Scotia almost 5 years ago is not the same one who had left there 21 years earlier. I will never regret this decision to move home. In fact, I think it was a necessary move. In order for me to figure out where I wanted to be, I needed to know where I didn't want to be. Don't get me wrong, I love Nova Scotia. I mean, I'm a blue noser through and through. It's a beautiful place, and the people are amazing, and it was good to have that time with my family. I was grateful to be there when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I was there to support him throughout his entire illness, and I was there for my mom during the first few difficult year after his death. I think I was where I was meant to be when I was needed the most. But the reality is my children will never settle in Nova Scotia. Actually, who knows where they will be, but it won't be there. And my tribe isn't in Nova Scotia. It's here in Ottawa, and in Petawawa, and in Kingston. It took me a long time to make the decision to move to Ottawa. I knew it was a life-altering decision, and also a very expensive one. One day, I went to talk to my financial advisor to see if I could afford the move. He immediately responded, "The question you should be asking yourself is, can you afford not to? Can you afford not to?" Moving to Ottawa was the best decision I have ever made, and it was so worth every penny. Sure, my bank account will be a lot fatter if I'd stayed in Nova Scotia, but I would be so unhappy, and I wouldn't be thriving. If I stayed in Nova Scotia by myself, without my children, far away from my friends, I wouldn't flourish. I would stagnate, and I would be lonely and unhappy. We all need social connection and interaction, and we all need each other, sometimes more than we are willing to admit. No woman is Superwoman, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that while I can do most things, I actually can't do everything by myself. Well, not all at once anyway. Postings, countless exercises, deployments, IR, they can try us and wear us down. Often when we are posted far away from our actual families, it is our military family we turn to for support in times of need. When our spouses are away on exercise or deployed, it's our tribe who step up to the plate to help us shuttle our children or get groceries or prepare meals. We give each other a safe place to vent and cry and to drink wine and gin and coffee. When we are lonely and overwhelmed, we go to our tribe, our military spouse sisters. They are always there, a shoulder to lean on, a listening ear, because they get it. They've been there too. We need friends to laugh with, to cry with, friends to celebrate our successes and help us up after we fall. We truly are far stronger together than we could ever be alone. But we need to be careful who we let into our tribe. We need to choose our tribe wisely. There's that word again, choice. Not all friendships serve us in all stages of our lives. And we sometimes need to choose to let friends go, the negative, bitter, toxic ones, the energy suckers. You really learn who your true friends are when you go through real life trauma, let me tell you. Sadly, some people will disappoint you. This was one of the most painful lessons I learned in widowhood. I have faced so much judgment and criticism as a widow. Ironically, most of it from older family members, but also from old friends. I didn't grieve properly. I didn't visit the cemetery enough. I started dating too soon. That one was actually really kind of funny because I hadn't even gone on a date at that point, but just in case I was thinking about it. I've heard comments about my vacations in the car I drive. And my kids are spoiled, because they don't have student loans. They also no longer have their father, but apparently that was irrelevant. The harsh truth is that not everyone will be there to support you. Not everyone will have your best interest at heart. Some people will judge you. They will push you down instead of helping you up. We don't need friends like that. I didn't need friends like that. Let those people go. They aren't your people. We need friends who will stab us in the front, not in the back. Friends who tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear. Friends who don't judge us but support us. Friends who choose to surround. We need to choose to surround ourselves with people who are authentic, honest, kind, inspirational, grateful, and positive. Silly dog. People who already know that one of the keys to thriving is attitude. Attitude really is everything. It takes a positive attitude to achieve positive results, but positivity seems to be in scarce quantities these days. It sometimes feels like we are a generation of complainers. We complain about everything, the weather, the traffic, the lineups in the grocery store. Complaining feeds and breeds a negative response. The more we complain, the more negative we are. It fosters a negative attitude. It negatively impacts those around us. It doesn't change our circumstances. It disqualifies the value of discomfort in our lives. It leaves us in victim mode. The more we complain, the less we thrive. Someone once remarked to me that I should be feeling very miserable. In fact, her words were just that. You must be so miserable. And then she proceeded to list all of the reasons why I should be miserable. And I can tell you right now, it was not a short list. And she's right. If I chose to focus solely on the items on that list, I would be feeling very miserable. But I don't. I don't view my life as a laundry list of complaints or miseries. I don't focus on all the things wrong with my life. I focus on all the things right with my life. The truth is, I have far more to be grateful for than I do to complain about. And that is what I choose to focus on. Being positive doesn't mean everything is perfect. Trust me, my life is far from perfect. It just means I look beyond the bad to find the good. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. There are so many benefits to complaining less. It shifts our focus to the positive, and it allows gratitude to take root. When we practice gratitude, our bodies and our beings thrive. Gratitude helps us see what we have, rather than focus on what we don't have. Gratitude strengthens our social relationships. It improves our personal sense of well-being. It increases our empathy. It lowers our risk of depression. It reduces stress, and it helps us sleep better. It improves our physical health, and it costs us absolutely nothing, except for a few minutes each day to focus on what we have to be grateful for. And if there's one word I would use to embody the last 5+ years of my life, it's this: grateful. I'm grateful for Dan and for our children. I'm grateful for the life we had. I'm grateful for the incredible support I've received and from my amazing tribe of friends. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had. And I'm so grateful for the choice I made to live. There was nothing I could do to change Dan's death. Nothing that would bring him back or the life we had together back. But I could openly accept the gift of his life his death offered me. I am so grateful that I chose that gift. His death gave me a perspective I would never have had otherwise. In so many ways, I didn't truly begin to live until after Dan died. All too often, we don't appreciate how fortunate we are until what we have is gone. So much of my life passed me by and I didn't even notice. I took so many things for granted. We are all guilty of that sometimes, I think. Not that we are purposely ungrateful, we just get so caught up in the chaos of life, so busy hurrying from one day to the next, we forget to stop and be grateful for all that we do have. And sometimes, in all the stress and all the rushing to and fro, we don't even see how much we have to be grateful for. We don't realize just how meaningful a pair of combat boots by the door really are. We all go through difficult times. We all have moments in our lives when we encounter suffering, and we all go through life changes. Life is a series of transitions, and at many of those stages, we have to redefine ourselves. Who am I now? Who do I want to be? Instead of looking at those stages negatively, we need to welcome them for the gift that they are, an opportunity. And if I can offer you all one widow's wisdom, it's this, the most important lesson I've learned. Embrace those transitions, but don't wait for them. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't wait until something catastrophic happens to choose to live the best life you possibly can. You can't wait to live or be the best version, your best life, or to be the best version of you. Don't wait for the next posting, or for the deployment to end, or for the kids to start school, or for them to leave for university, or for your spouse to retire. Don't wait for the perfect time, because there is no perfect time. Don't wait, because time is not going to wait for you. You don't need to make massive life changes in order to thrive. You don't have to sell your house and move to a new town or quit your job, well, even though I sold my house and moved to a new town, but that's besides the point. Small concerted changes can help you thrive. Treat yourself with the same kindness you treat others, and show kindness to others. Hold the door for someone. Change your language. The words and language we choose to use are so important in transforming a negative mindset to a positive one. Practice gratitude. Start each day by writing down 3 things you are grateful for. Spend time in nature. Just a 15-minute walk can have a positive impact on your mood. And literally, stop and smell the roses. They only bloom for such a short time. Give back, volunteer, and laugh. Oh my gosh, laugh. Simple, small, concerted efforts make such a huge difference. Dan loved the old me, just as I was, but he'd be pretty damn impressed by this version of me, and he'd be incredibly proud. But he'll never get to know this version of me. He'll never read a word I've written. He'll never sit down and listen to me speak to an audience. He'll never get to go for a run with me, and he loved to run. He will never get to see me thrive. I will never get back the time I squandered with him. All I can do now is to make the most of the precious time I have left. My purpose in life isn't just to survive, it's to thrive, to live as fully and boldly as possible, to make the most out of every single moment, to love, to laugh, to give. I choose to live. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Monica, for sharing that with us.